So, are you guys, incidentally, are you using an SSO with IFS? Single sign-on?
Yes.
Okay. So normally you probably wouldn't even see this screen then. Of course, you would just basically log straight in. Okay, so I'm logged in as an admin, and I'm initially landing on the space management dashboard here. There's a ton of stuff here, and I just want to sort of talk about the general UI. There's a bunch of stuff here that probably would be removed, like the space survey stuff at the bottom. There's some other elements here that can be very easily customized. And in fact, before I even get into showing what all the details are, all of the buttons and sections on all the dashboards can very easily be turned on and off, basically on the fly by anybody who has admin rights. So for example, there's this visitor section here that does badging and stuff like that. That is currently off. So don't feel too overwhelmed if there's a bunch of stuff on here that's not totally relevant. So talk a little bit about the UI in general. Obviously, we've got some little KPIs around the edges here, these little gauges. And so these can all be changed. Any user can set their own instruments, their own widgets around the edge. So this is just sort of the default set here. So we have some sort of high-level views of the space system here. So how many of our seats are currently occupied? Sort of the breakdown of how our space is distributed across all of our buildings. We've got some top reports here, so the most common reports that are being accessed, as well as, again, a sort of high-level summary of space. In the middle is kind of where all the action is actually happening. So, anything we want to do relative to assigning people to seats or categorizing our space, all of that type of stuff is all here. In addition to sort of all this stuff that I'm seeing here, whoever is logging in, the system, of course, will be able to tell who they are, and you can secure any element here based on either, directly based on the user or more likely based on their security role. So, for example, a sort of lower rights user may actually only have sort of a little area down here like this. Now, because you guys are using indoor finders, almost all of the more casual users are going to be directed to that, which is probably a more appropriate interface. But again, because I am a full admin, I have rights to everything. And you may find somebody like a space manager or somebody like that may have the top 3 sections, for example, or something like that. So individual buttons and all of the sections can be secured. So let's go ahead and actually, but before I continue, you'll also note that there is this sort of global navigation button up here that gives us access to other dashboards. So the work management, property, EHS, suites, the public dash, and some other stuff there that we're using for testing down here. And again, because I'm an admin, I also have access to the administration dashboard. We might take a look at that a little bit later. Finally, before we actually dive in and start looking at stuff in more detail, I'll point out that there's a little knowledge base thing here, and we'll probably look at this also a little bit later. This allows you as an admin to both look at all of the help that we have set up, all the help articles, all the help courses, but you can also author these things yourself using the UI. So it doesn't quite take screenshots, but it can essentially have the server print the current page. And you can click on stuff and say, do steps and whatever. So although we certainly want to provide you with all the detail you need to understand how to use the system, if you wanted to show somebody how to do something, you can very easily make your own little help and either print it to PDF and send it to them or just direct them to it in the system.
Oh, that's tremendous.
There is also a report issues thing here, which again will also sort of screenshot, what's going on. The person can say what they're expecting to happen or whatever, and you can get notifications on that as well. Okay, so pretty much all of the space management stuff is located behind the buildings button. There are some shortcuts that allow you to sort of jump directly to certain features like categorizing space, statusing space, assigning seating, but it's all sort of generically available through this buildings button. So we land on our list of buildings here, and of course there's a bunch of nonsense in this data set that I'm going to be showing you. This is a big sample dev system here, and so as we click around here, hopefully I'll select the right buildings and whatnot. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff here that is probably a little bit silly. That said, I want to stop here for just a second and talk again just about the UI in general, because pretty much all lists of data throughout the system will be sort of similar to this, in the sense that up at the top we have the ability to refresh the page. We have a sort of global search. We have things like sort of pre-made filters. These, again, are all kind of baked into the forms and can be edited by anybody who's an admin. So you could create some of your own sort of predefined filters like this, such that if I am looking for certain buildings or whatever, I can filter this down. I know you have a lot of very small buildings, so that could be sort of a pre-made filter here. We also have the ability to do grouping. Again, this is all customizable, and we have it preset to do either a group by the building category or a group by the state that the building is in. And then finally, there's sorting as well up here. Then we have some sort of static capabilities across the top here, creating a new building, showing all floors in a single list instead of drilling down to the building, or showing all spaces that are associated with all those. We also have things like, we can dive into a map here and visualize where all of our buildings are, as well as equipment or basically any other sort of GIS style asset that you want to show here. So, for example, we have a customer that's a railroad customer that has mile markers and track and all sorts of stuff like that can be visualized in this manner. So you can click on things here in the map and get some more information there. So I don't know how relevant that is, but that's not exactly core facility stuff. Okay, so the list in general also, you'll see that anytime you've got a little one of these arrows here, that indicates that there are some sort of options that are associated with this. So I can click on this and get various little things here. So I can visualize this by just zooming straight into it on a map. I can look at sort of the text-based details. I can just jump straight to the drawing. And then there's some other options here that'll appear based on what it is you guys are trying to accomplish. So let's just go ahead and go to show details, because that's I think kind of the more interesting view of this building. So we have a sort of high-level summary of the building. Obviously, the most interesting part, I think, is kind of down here at the bottom, where we can see all of our floor plans. And we have a number of different little queries that can be run against those floor plans. And we can look at all of this in much more detail, but sort of, looking at the building as a whole, we can look at what are the surfaces in each space. We can look at how our space is categorized. Also, just what is actually linked. So, if there's some sort of problem with, when you uploaded the drawing or whatever, that'll be evident from this view. And then sort of the starting or default query is our occupancy status. So which of our spaces are at capacity or underutilized or overutilized. So underutilized could mean strictly vacant, or it could just mean that you've got a space that maybe could technically hold 3 people and there's only 1 person in there. So that'll still light up in green to indicate that more people could be assigned there. A very common thing is this kind of stuff here across the top, where we can look at any documents that are associated with this building. You can see we have 24 total documents here. We can also do things like looking at internal comments. This is mostly testing nonsense here, but if you want to communicate with the space management team, you can type in your messages here. And you can actually also reference people. So, you can do Nick Springate, look at this, and they'll get a little notification that shows that they should come and take a look at this building here. So those kinds of features are basically available with any table or any form in the system if you want it. A couple more notes before we actually start doing something productive here. We've got our, all the spaces in the building, all the personnel in the building. So if you just want to look at sort of a spreadsheet style view that can be sorted and filtered and printed out to Excel, this is one way of getting at that information here. And the last thing I want to look at here before we, before we start actually clicking around and doing something, is there is a reporting section here. So the dashboard as a whole, space management as a whole, has a reporting section. But if you just want to kick out reports that are basically related to this building itself, this is a list of reports just for this building. So for example, we can come in here and let's take a look at our space summary here, which is going to sort of combine a couple of different things. Oop. That's what happens when you do this on a dev system. Just a moment.
So in a quick question on the report side, is there like as we or if it's maybe on another module, let me know. But like, could in that reporting section under the building space area, is this just space related, or is it like our assets would show a report there as well? Like,
so we have reports for assets and equipment and people and visitors and work and everything. And so what we were looking at there was just space related. However, depending on what stuff you guys are going to accomplish, that all of the little reporting areas will be modified. So that won't be anything you would need to do, though you would be able to have the rights to adjust those things. During onboarding, we basically would identify, okay, here are all the things you want to do, and let's just get all of the reporting areas updated, all the columns adjusted to the stuff that's relevant to you. Obviously the sample data system may have, data in columns that you're not going to be using. It may have stuff that you do want to use, et cetera. So yeah, all those things will be adjusted as we go.
Got it.
So this is sort of the formatted style report. So this would come out essentially in a PDF, and so we can do gauges and things like that here. We can do stack plans based on category or ownership. We can look at the actual floor plans that'll come out here in PDF. And one of the things that I do want to point out is that these are all vector PDFs. So this is not just a picture of this floor plan. If you send this to somebody, you can actually zoom, as far in as you want, and all the little detail will still be there. So even if you have really big floor plans, you don't lose all the resolution. So this is sort of a built-in viewer we have. But if I actually download this as a PDF and open it in my local viewer, I would be able to zoom in as much as I want here. And again, it's all vector. So like I can zoom way in like this. And we can also do, architectural D or E size. I don't know if you have a big giant plotter somewhere, but if so, these can come out in that size as well. Okay, so enough about sort of looking at the reports and whatnot. Let's actually dive in and look at some of these floors. So once again, I'll just point out, we've got these little chevrons here. That tells us I can click on this and get some additional details. So I can view the basics about the floor. I can dive straight into the floor plan. I can download the DWG. I can also look at a 3D view if you happen to have Matterport or something else like that, where you have 3D scans of your buildings. Those can be accessible here. All right, so we dive in here to our floor plan view. So this is where we can do a lot of the basic space management stuff. So again, let's just pause for a second and talk about the interface. A bunch of tools over here. So printing it or downloading it, doing some measurements of stuff in the drawing. The main kind of bulk of what's happening, though, is controlled with all these buttons here. And so these are the different configurations of the current view. You'll see that right now, if I move my mouse over this, it's telling us this is set up to do occupancy. So that makes sense. We have an occupancy query here telling us our statuses. We've got a plan showing us all the little names. But each of these does sort of a different thing. That one apparently we have no data for. So if I want to work with surfaces, carpeting versus tile versus whatever, I can click on that. I can click on this one to do categorization, and there's lots of other things that can go into this. So ownership of the spaces, or where is our equipment? So putting in symbols for where all the equipment is, as well as doing things like showing where there's open work, etc. But that does more than just sort of turn on the different queries. It also adjusts what is going to be visible when I click on spaces and when I do other activities here. Just a second here. Something happened there. What is going on? Oh, there we go. So when I click on any of these individual spaces, I get a form over here that is directly linked to whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish. So by default, you'll see that, again, we're in this occupancy, so it's showing me who is seated in there and some basic details about how many seats are actually available in that area right there. Let's just talk again a little bit more about what's going on here. We also have the option here to switch between floors, so I can switch over here to my second floor, switch to my third floor, etc. In addition, because I'm on occupancy, I also get my list of personnel over here. And by default, this is a list of people who do not yet have seating. So you'll see there's a little filter up here that can control, do they have seating, or some other little filters there that control that. So if I want to, for example, assign some people to seats, I can click on them over here, and it'll tell us, hey, you're trying to assign this Andrew person, and I can just click on a space right there. So you'll see that has now added that person to that space. And incidentally, it has also colored it now as red, because this space really isn't expecting to have more than one person. If I click on it again, you'll see that this metrics area here tells me 2 of 1 seats are occupied. So we have more seats occupied than we're supposed to have there. Now, if I want to move that person or delete them, that's available right here. So I can assign them a different seat or remove them. So for example, if I want to move them down there, that's not really solving our problem. It's just moving it down there, but you can see how easy it is to move people around. So we can search for people, or use our list here and just drag them essentially into spaces, and that'll get them seated. So any questions about sort of the general flow of that?
Nope.
Cool. So you can see it's fairly easy to get access to that stuff. In addition to our sort of basics here, you'll see that there's a couple of buttons here, toggles up here that can allow us to look at more detail. So this is kind of a more complete view of that space, where we have who owns the space, the BOMA. If you're doing chargebacks and stuff like that, where you want to do proration of common area back to the departments, that stuff is kind of controlled here. Assign personnel, as well as any service requests that might be in that space. Now, relevant to stuff that would be going over to indoor finders, we have a status area here, so you can control whether it is reservable. I don't know what your terminology is, but sometimes that's hot desking or hoteling. Those things are similar, but not quite the same.
Yeah, we have both.
So we would configure this to be in line with what it is you're doing with indoor finders. Additionally, there is also a full edit form, so sort of the same stuff we just saw, a little bit more spread out, but also with some of those things we saw at the top of the building form. So if I want to associate documents with this space, or if I want to have a conversation internally about this space, as well as any open tickets that are assigned to this space. I do want to point out that there is a print available. So while we earlier, of course, we were looking at kind of our pre-formatted, one-click reports based on the building. You could go in and click on a report and just get all the floor plans, categorized or based on the occupancy status or the occupancy plans. You can also just print this at any time. Either the full drawing or your current view, or selecting a small area to print. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a number of different paper sizes here, and again, this can be customized to whatever paper sizes you're going to commonly need. So architectural E or D or whatever. One last thing with this little interface here, we've got these queries over here that we kind of have pre-established. But there is also the ability to, turn on any of the queries that you want to turn on. So this is kind of our preset setup where we've got various symbol queries down here, labeling queries like the names of the spaces or the names of the people, and then various little highlight queries up here, space by department or whatever it is that you want to do. So any of those queries, again, those things can be deactivated if they're not going to be used, and you can limit it down to just the stuff you're commonly using. But as long as you have rights to get in here, like space editors or space managers would be able to come in here and they could customize this view. With one of these queries, incidentally, you can turn some of these things off. So if you just wanted to show somebody where a particular department had space, you can do that. You can also change the color if for whatever reason you didn't like that color. You could go here and then print it out and send it to somebody or whatever. Now I won't get into it in too much detail because I do want to get over to the work system. But there is a system here for linking, and again, I don't want to get into this too much, but here's where you would basically upload new drawings. This will tell you, how it's linking to the database, basically, and it's a pretty easy process. But I'll leave that for a training session down the road. So again, any questions in general about the way all this stuff is working?
Not so far.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. Is there anything else here I want to talk about? You can have access, of course, to sort of your just big full list of people. So if you wanted to start from here rather than start from the floor plan, this is a way to do that. And we do have the ability to import your personnel. So ideally, of course, that would come from some sort of feed from HR. I don't know if maybe you guys are using Workday or something like that.
Yeah, Workday.
Yeah, so we can work with your IT to actually get your, all your people so that if somebody is a new hire or whatever, they'll just automatically be brought in. But in the early days of getting things set up, if it needs to be manually imported, we can do that from here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into my user settings here just so I don't have to keep going back and forth. I'm going to set my dashboard preference to work management so that when I go home, now I'll always land on work management. Incidentally, again, that those things are all available down here. So if I needed to go back to space, that's available here. And if need be, if you do have a bunch of people who kind of have mixed roles where they need to be able to look at multiple things on a single dashboard, no problem there as well. Again, I showed earlier that you could at least sort of briefly showed that you can edit the dashboard. So buttons from other dashboards can be added. So you can have like a single dash that does both space and work, for example. But usually we're expecting that those are slightly separate concerns. So.